What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of the Pound for Pound. I'm here with my main man, Mike Dubb, and it's breaking news, essentially. We finally got the word, has come out today, that Julio Jones has officially been traded to the Tennessee Titans, and, well, we're here to talk about it.
Right.
First, foremost, Mike, what's going on, brother? Hadn't seen you in a bit. How you been doing?
Hey man, got a chance to just say spend some time with the kids. Go to the beach a little bit. I'm here at my parents' house, so just able to kind of get away from the hustle and bustle a little bit. So anytime you're able to get some rest and unplug, it's a good day, man. It's good. And I will say this though, while I'm enjoying my vacation, getting the news today that Julio Jones was officially there's a trade partner. We're reaching that finality state of okay. We know that Julio Jones said that he was out of here. I know I would say in the last couple of days there were some kind of conflicting reports that there may not be a team. Julio may stay with the Falcons after all. We knew that was kind of hogwash, but today is Sunday, and today is a day where we know that change is absolutely 100% gonna happen.
Yep.
Season starts in a couple of months, and again, this is one where for a Sunday we got a lot to unpack, man.
That's it. And so let's go ahead and for the folks out there, here are the parameters of the trade. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans get Julio Jones. The Falcons, in return, get a second rounder in 2022 and a fourth rounder in 2023. Tennessee Titans get a sixth rounder from us, as well as Julio Jones, and they also take on Julio Jones's salary, which is the facilitator of 15.3 million in 2021, and the rest of his deal. The Falcons will keep 7.5 million in dead money this year, and also, if I read it right on Spotrac, it's another 15 million in dead money next year. So the dead money next year is really not that big a deal. Not as big as some people might make it sound. The bigger thing was that it was obvious Julio didn't want to be here anymore. And it was obvious that if you were going to trade him, then the biggest thing was you had to get as much compensation as possible. Whether that had been a first rounder and a player that was kind of reported earlier. I mean, I really feel like if somebody had actually offered them a first rounder and they were going to take the money, then they would have taken it. So that tells me if somebody had offered a first rounder, they were wanting
Yeah,
Atlanta to eat some of the salary. And the whole point of this move was if you were going to move him, at bare minimum, you were going to not eat any of the salary this year. That was like, it was plain and simple as far as that went. Now, uh, the idea that the Falcons had to move him to create salary cap is false. It's a false narrative. There were other ways that you could have created it. You could have created it by extending Grady Jarrett. You could have created it by cutting a handful of other lesser people. So the narrative that you needed to move Julio Jones to create salary cap was a false narrative. But the narrative that Julio Jones didn't want to be here anymore, and if he didn't want to be here and you were going to move him, then you were going to not eat any of that salary.
right, right,
So,
right. I think I agree, and I think that it's interesting that you kind of broke down the numbers around the salary cap, for this situation because I think the biggest thing for me is to kind of take it to the next step of this conversation is like I fundamentally think this made us a more flexible team just in terms of what we're able to do. We can kind of start to imagine new scenarios. Okay, is there an edge rusher on the market that we can get and all that kind of stuff? But I don't think this move, personally myself, fundamentally as of today, made us a better football team. So I think raw motion wise, that to me probably is why it stings the most. Now, what we may see is over the next couple of months is that, we may start to prioritize other good quality free agents who still have some tread left in their tires to make us a better football team. Because, I think that for as much as one person has dominated and polarized this team, it's still a team sport. And I always ask you this question, JR, and pound for pound family, this is more of a question for you guys. name to me one receiver that's led his team to the Super Bowl. Like, what Super Bowl has been run through a receiver? And I'd like to know what the stats were, what that looked like, because I think for as much as we're like, oh, Julio Jones, and he does, absolutely, it's an absolute big loss. Nobody's going to sit here and think like, oh, Julio Jones is 32. He's a freak of nature. Will continue to be a freak of nature. But I think that, you know, where I'm probably most conflicted is that it leaves a sizable hole, I would say, in our just current leadership. But it's a good chance, I think, for a lot of people to step up. And again, it's next couple of months are definitely going to be interesting around Flowery Branch, man. Like, if we've not seen anything now, man, Terry F and Arthur Smith keep the Falcons' names in the national media's mouths, and today is no different.
No doubt. And it's like, to go back to your point about like the last time a big name receiver, led their team to a Super Bowl, like I can't think of any right off the top of my head. I mean, Calvin Johnson never came away with a Super Bowl. To my knowledge, Larry Fitzgerald never came away with a Super Bowl. Odell Beckham hasn't gotten one.
Right,
The
right,
list goes on in that sense. Even Randy Moss, when he was with the Patriots, didn't get one.
right.
So the idea that you have to have one to win a Super Bowl, especially in a salary cap driven era, is a kind of a. I mean, do you consider Tyreek Hill a elite wide receiver because he won one with Kansas City? But I don't know how much of that might have been before Mahomes inked his big deal. You know what I'm saying? Because the idea that
Yeah,
it's hard to build a team when you're paying a wide receiver a ton of money and you're paying a quarterback a ton of money.
and
That's just
yeah,
that's
yeah.
tough.
I would agree. That's a good point. Let's focus on that for a second. So, yeah, Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes. I agree. But I think that it took. I think it took Andy Reid. The Chiefs are a little bit different. Because I think Tyreek Hill would have been a threat on any team he played. But it needed to be the right pairing. But again,
Right.
I ask you this question: it's like the only thing I question about Julio Jones is if you look at, yeah, I'm out of there, and these are my preferences of teams. I want to play for a contender. I want to have a quarterback who does this, that, and the third. What fundamentally makes Ryan Tannehill a better quarterback than Matt Ryan?
I don't see
I
and if what you're talking about, like, okay, if you want to talk about like, I want to play with a quarterback that's got a big arm or whatever. Does Ryan Tannehill have a bigger arm than Matt Ryan? Sure,
no,
maybe.
oh,
We could talk about.
it's
I know he was one of the more effective deep ball throwers last year, but the funny part is, like, when you talk about like raw stats and numbers, is that there was only 36 deep ball attempts. Now, it could be a thing because like Julio Jones could have, in a sense, looked at that and said, okay, under Arthur Smith's tutelage, they're not taking a bunch of deep shots. And that's what I want. I don't want to do the dirty work across the middle anymore, so to speak. And I'm not necessarily wanting to do the run after the catch thing. All I'm trying to do is like blow by a defensive back, use the talents and the abilities that I still have, so to speak. Even though he hasn't shown a diminish in any of his abilities, I'm just trying to think of like, why would you look at this situation here in Atlanta and say this ain't where I want to be anymore, but then think that the Titans are going to be a better situation? Is it as simple as they have Derrick Henry, they run the ball more? Um, you have AJ Brown, but here you have Calvin Ridley.
right, right, and
So
yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think it reaches the ultimate question. I think the kind of the final question for me on this, like the biggest question is were the Tennessee Titans so explosive offensively due to, don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry being a beast, doing what he has to do, but
yeah,
when you take out the two tight ends, kind of the Arthur Smith schematic advantage, what is this Tennessee Titan team? What are they really? Now, don't get me wrong, and I don't, again, this is a Falcons channel, but if you look at them hypothetically on paper, with a AJ Brown, Julio Jones, you got Henry basically at the running back position, Tannehill. Yeah, they absolutely on paper they look good. And I think the X factor here is Derrick Henry, because they do have, again, top
Right.
two back in the league.
Well, to me, the real X factor is going to be Todd Downing, Tennessee's OC. Like,
Right. So yeah,
does he try to force Tannehill into a role that is not better suited for Tannehill? Like, the absolute ironic thing is if Tannehill goes back to his Miami days.
I
If Tannehill goes back to his Miami days, like as far as play goes,
right.
unfortunately for Julio Jones, he's not in a better situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's the part that if I'm Julio Jones, I'm looking and going, whew, I don't know if this is going to be
Right.
like there's going to be inherent risk anywhere he goes. But, the Tennessee always kind of struck me as an odd place for him to land. Now, I don't want this to turn into like by no means a Julio Jones hit piece, because that's not how I feel about it. I feel that Julio Jones gave us a decade worth of
Right.
amazing catches, a decade worth of stellar play, battling through nagging injuries on a yearly basis.
Right.
So, in that aspect, I definitely want to say, thank you to Julio Jones. He was one of the things that made watching Atlanta fun,
Right.
offensively. But some people have brought up like, oh, the game splits where, Matt Ryan doesn't have Julio Jones. Okay, that was what, the 2013 season when he missed 11 games, right? Not a great season for myriad of reasons. But if I'm not mistaken, Harry Douglas was a 1,000-yard receiver that year. Okay, so then you also had the 7 games this past year. Again, not a great season, but I don't necessarily think it's indicative of Julio Jones being on the field. Are we better with Jones on the field? Yeah, of course. Like, anybody who's trying to argue that point,
Yeah.
that we're not better, we're better without Julio Jones, I think that's
Right.
a
Right.
that's crazy talk. Are we better with him? Yes. Are we going to be able to survive without him? Also, yes.
Absolutely.
Because think about it. Look at what, something I've been pounding the table, and I'm going to keep pounding it as the summer goes on, is look at what Arthur Smith did in Tennessee. He didn't have Julio Jones. He ain't never coached Julio Jones. So, but you say, oh, JR, he had A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown ain't Julio Jones. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
He's an ex-receiver. I'll give you that. But you don't think that, Arthur Smith can make dominant with Calvin Ridley, as we have talked about in videos past?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're right.
Go ahead.
I still think, and well, another thing too, I still think 32 years old, the injuries, and again, like I said, I don't like to speak injuries on people because football is a very violent game. But I think that, one, the spot too, because, there's another thing too. Mike Vrabel being the coach, actually, I hate to use the Dan Quinn references, it's a guy that, I'll put it to you like this, I'll go there, I'll say it. I think Julio wanted to go to a place where he's received the last couple of years here in Atlanta, because Arthur Smith came out and said, accountability, you got to practice more. You brought this to my attention, JR, when we were talking about practice film on Julio, right? So you look at it like this. Julio gets to go to a situation where he gets to play alongside a guy who looks at him like an idol, first of all. So it's like, he already comes in a glass case. Everybody knows who he is. I think he's made it clear where he wants to be. So I don't think a team is going to, all right, Julio, you're under our fold now. You do what I say. It's like, no, we're just so happy that I think that that will kind of be on par. And that's fine. For him, he's earned that ability to have some diva treatment. But for us, it reminds me of this, man. There are literally no divas on the Atlanta Falcons now. Literally. Like, there's not one person that you can say here, maybe, and I mean very small, maybe.
Well, yeah, I'm going to get to that here in just a second. But
I say maybe from the standpoint that he knows he's the bona fide number one receiver, but he's still hungry because it's a contract year for him. So you won't see him slipping. You're going to get max Calvin Ridley. So I think a hungry Calvin Ridley helps us, because Calvin really does make me a little bit nervous because 190 pounds as our number one receiver. But when Calvin Ridley's dialed in and locked in, there's not too many cornerbacks that can cover this guy in the league. And it's been like that since the very first day. So this is a new year of Ridley. So we expect Ridley to take the next step. I expect Kyle Pitts to be on par. And again, Russell Gage, it's time to step up. Frank Darby, it's time to step up.
That's it. Russell Gage, Tajay Sharp, all those guys.
What's up, baby? What you got for us, man? So it's
that's
time.
It. Right.
So that's where I'm at.
And as we process this, I think that there's going to be avenues to explore. You have the combination of Kyle Pitts and Hayden Hurst. You have Calvin Ridley. I'm glad in a sense that it's done before training camp.
Yeah.
I didn't want this dragging, as a fan, I didn't want this dragging into training camp. Right. I didn't want to be the question of, oh, well, are we going to keep Julio or is he going to show up? Or I didn't want any of that. Do I think that the Falcons would wanted better compensation? Sure. But with the contract that he had, as much as Tennessee was going to have to eat, because they're going to have to restructure Ryan Tannehill's contract. There's work that they got to do to fit this in.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
Hey, this was one more knock, JR. I gotta say though, I say if he mismanages this, they will look similar to the Cleveland Browns of last year because you got all that talent. You got think about it. You had Nick Chubb, you had Kareem Hunt, you had Beckham, you had Landry, you had a decent quarterback, right? And I think sometimes as the season goes on, a lot of stuff has got to go right to be a championship team. And you can emulate it. It looks good. I like the super team type. I go with my boys and we're going to win. And it sounds good. But again, the AFC is tough, man. So they still got to go.
Yeah, anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. If the Tennessee Titans, miss out on the AFC South or miss out on a wild card spot, this trade is going to then look rough on them. That's pretty much our views on Julio Jones. As always, y'all can catch us live on Wednesdays. And we'll definitely have more to talk about it as we get the rest of the guys involved. But hey, Mike, I appreciate you being able to jump on. We're having some technical issues here at the end, so if you want to give me a big thumbs up, and we will go from there. All right, guys, y'all have a good night. We'll holler at you later.